Hi, this is Josh Carr. Today, what I wanted to talk about is how ugly and confusing preferred return language can get in private equity models. I came across this in a deal I was working on recently, and the language is just horrendous. So the language is there, you can see it. I've basically clipped it from the actual document, and as it says, the preferred return would be an amount of 10% per year. It uses this term average daily balance. It then talks about how the return will commence when someone makes the investment, and of course that could be in on any particular day. It then says that the return will be based on a computational year that varies. It could be 365 days or 366, assumingly depending on what year it occurs in. Obviously, you've got leap years. It then says the return will be computed for the actual number of days, and the return is cumulative, and the return should be compounded quarterly. So we got a lot going on here. We've got that we're paying someone 10% per year. We have the idea that the day that they might make the contribution will vary. We've got the idea that different years have different numbers of days, and then we also have the idea of quarterly compounding. So it's kind of a hodgepodge. And thrown into this whole conversation, we also have the language of average daily balance. What the heck is that referring to when we talk about average daily balance? Well, here's a solution. And I'm not saying that this is clear language, but I think that this is a pretty good approach to how you would solve this. And so here goes. So we have the 10% per year. That's 10% per annum. In other words, per year. We have a different number of days in different years. Say in 2020, we have 366 days, whereas 2021, we have 365. And there are really two kinds of calculations we've got to do. We've got to do calculations when someone's fully invested for the entire quarter, and then calculations for if they make a contribution that's in a partial quarter. Because as it says, the return will commence on the date when the member makes the investment, and it's going to be calculated on exact days. So let's do the quarterly piece first, and then do the other piece, because, well, they're different. One's trickier than the other. The quarterly return isn't that bad. It basically says this. Let's say we're looking at December 31, 2020. That quarter has 92 days. December 31 minus September 30, 92 days. For this piece, what you would do is you'd say, well, it's 10% per year. Okay, I'm with you so far. And they're 92 days over 366. In other words, how many days are in that quarter? Okay, and we're compounding quarterly. So what we do is the 10% is kind of like a stated rate on a mortgage. It's not an effective rate. We're trying to figure out how we're compounding it. Now, if every quarter was exactly the same, you'd probably do 2.5% per quarter because, 10% divided by 4. But in this case, we have to take into account how many days are in each quarter because, as it says very clearly, the return is determined on the basis of a computational year of the number of days in the year, and assumedly that carries forward to the quarter, because as it continues to say, the return shall be computed for the actual number of days occurring and the period that it takes place in. So 10% times 92 days over 366. So as you can see, here it's over 366. Here it's 366. Actually, I should make that 365. I apologize. There it is, 365. That's over 365. See, I'm not perfect. I had actually drag copied that over. So these are over 366 days. These are over 365 days because this is happening in 2021, whereas this is happening in 2020. Okay, simple enough. And as you can see, instead of it being 2.5 per quarter, it varies. Now, don't get me wrong, you could just do 2.5 per quarter and the difference would not be that substantial. But if you want to be correct about it, you've got different amounts. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. The one that's weird, of course, is the partial period. Let's say we make an investment in January 14 in the quarter that ends March 31, 2020 and started when the old quarter ended December 31, 19. That quarter normally has 91 days in it. Now, to make this work, I got to plug in a dollar amount, and I need to put in a dollar amount because I need to figure out the average daily balance so then I can figure out the quarterly pref. The average daily balance would be, let's say we contribute $1,000 January 14. There are 77 days left in the quarter because March 31 minus January 14 is 77. The average daily balance is $846. Or in other words, we have $1,000 there for 77 days. And for the remaining 14 days, or I should say the starting 14 days, we had no balance. There are 91 days in total. So in other words, the average daily balance is $846. Average daily balance is not something you usually see in private equity models. This comes from like credit card math. But, this was on an actual deal, and I don't know what the lawyer was doing. I don't know if he or she copied it from some credit card document that they saw and then threw it into a private equity model. But one way or another, there she is. Now, the quarterly rate would have been normally 2.49. Okay, good so far. Which means 2.49% on 846 is $21. $21, if you started with $1,000, is basically like a preferred return of 2.1, right? So basically we're saying it's 2.1% on 1,000, or to put it another way, it's 2.49 on the average daily balance. Now, whether or not you want to represent that as 2.1 or you want to say it's 2.49 on the average daily balance, either way, you can basically see this is the quarterly return in full quarters. This is the quarterly return when we have a partial payment. And this is an approach to this. So obviously in a full-fledged model, there's going to be more moving pieces. But hopefully this bit of conversation made figuring out what the heck an average daily balance is makes more sense. And also so you can think about exact days versus quarterly calculations and how all these concepts play nice with each other. Of course, what whoever built this should have done is also built an Excel spreadsheet so that when all the parties signed this document, they had some idea of what the heck they were agreeing to. They didn't, and part of my work is to help people unpack things that are this ugly. In any event, hopefully you found this helpful. If this sort of stuff makes you happy, feel free to check out my website. I also teach classes on this sort of stuff. Or, just send me an email if you have some sticky bit of private equity language that you're interested in how I would model it. And of course, I guess my final comment would be, this is one way to approach this. This language is kind of ugly. I'm not saying you couldn't interpret it other ways. I just think I interpreted it correctly in this case. So hopefully you find that to be useful. Thanks again, and keep on building better models.